mathematicians! How do we multiply fractions? Let's find out. Okay, first of all, a key word that you want to be on the lookout for, especially in word problems, is the word of between two fractions in a sentence, like find 1/4 of 1/2. This word of implies multiplication. We're not actually saying times, but when we find 1/4 of 1/2, we can model this in picture form. If we have 1/2 and we are taking half of it and cutting that into fourths, and you only have 1/4 of that 1/2. Well, if you cut them all into equal sized pieces, you now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because 4 times 2 is 8. And you've only got 1 shaded in because 1 times 1 is 1. So you can show this in pictures, or you can recognize that of means we're multiplying. And when we multiply fractions, I honestly prefer to use the algorithm, which is just to remember we're always multiplying the numerator times the numerator. 1 times 1 is 1. And the denominator times the denominator. 4 times 2 is 8. 1/8. All right, let's try a few examples. 2/3 times 3/5. Numerator times numerator. 2 times 3 is 6. Denominator times denominator. 3 times 5 is 15. Cool. Key point number 3. When multiplying fractions, both factors must be fractions. Over here that 10 is not a fraction. So if you have a mixed number or a whole number like that 10, you must convert them into fractions before you can multiply. So I remember that 10, any whole number, can be written as the whole number divided by 1. And oh yay, now that's a fraction. I can multiply 10 times 3 is 30. I can multiply 1 times 5 is 5. And I'm not actually done. Key point number 4 says that all final answers must be simplified. This means that we're checking, do 30 and 5 have any factors in common? What is the greatest common factor of 30 and 5? I'm going to divide by that. 30/5. You can look for the greatest common factor, or you can remember your divisibility rules. I know that 30 ends in a 0 and 5 ends in a 5, and I can divide numbers that end in 0 or 5 by 5s. We're dividing by 5 over 5 because that's really like dividing by 1. Even though it's going to change the look of our answer, it's not actually going to change how many, like if we drew a picture, it would change the size we cut them up into, but not how many holes and parts we've shaded. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. 5 divided by 5 is 1. I want you to even take this further. 6 divided by 1 is 6 wholes. That is the most simplified way to write our answer here. Not just 6 over 1, which yes is a very simplified fraction, but if it's over 1 at the end or divided by 1, you can just simplify it and do that division problem. If it ended up being something else, like let's go back. If it ended up being something else, you would not simplify and you would have a final answer of a fraction. So 6/15. You can also simplify in the moment. I've lost my marker. Where is it? I'm drawing. Here we go. I see a 3 here and a 3 here. If I divide 6 and 15 divided by 3, that gives me 2/5. 2/5. So one other strategy is to not even do your multiplication yet, but to say, 2 times 3, that's the same as 3 times 2, right? If I flip the order of these, this looks an awful lot like a fancy 1. And we all know that 1 times a number, even a number like 2/5, still gives you that final number, 2/5. So that's another simplifying strategy. If you're like, Miss Douglas, I want to learn more, find me. We'll talk about it. Last up, Oh yeah, if it's a mixed number, you still also have to change that to a fraction. We use my favorite strategy, the Texas method, and we multiply 3 times 3. I draw a little arrow to show me the direction. 3 times 3 is 9. That means if I had 3 holes, oh, can you hear my cat digging wildly on the curtain? Mouse, what are you doing? 3 holes split into thirds. In total, you'd have 9 pieces. That's what 3 times 3 comes from. The plus is when we add that extra 1/3. So now we have 9 plus 1 is 10, and there's still the size of 3 to make it a whole. So now we have 10/3 times 2/5, and you can multiply that. You can choose to either multiply it out first, 20/15, or to say, I recognize that 10 and 5 share a common factor of 5. If I rewrote this like this, 10/5, that can simplify. I can simplify that fraction before I even multiply it to 2/1. And then I could multiply and get my final answer, or I could go up here and say, I can divide these both by 5. That still gets me the same final answer. It's fine if you leave your answer as a simplified improper fraction, or if you really don't like that, you can go back and say 4/3. That's the same as 3/3 plus 1/3, and that's really 1 whole, one fancy one. So 4/3 is the same as 1 and 1/3. I personally leave my answers as simplified improper fractions because if you make a mistake from here getting to here, then this final answer is wrong. So I like to just leave it as a simplified improper fraction.